Charlie, what's another word that you see is even more controversial?
All right. The word believe appears about 250 times in the average English translation. Of those 250 times, in my translation, I found that all but about 20, less than 20 actually, were the right translation for the Greek word. The Greek word can mean believe, but it can also mean have faith or trust. And so in order to properly translate, you need to translate it according to the context to figure out whether the word should be believe or whether it should be trust. They have two different meanings. Now, this Greek word could be both a verb and a noun. And to just make matters more confusing, when the Latin translation was made, the translators put the noun into one Latin word and the verb into a different Latin word, which gave the impression that these were two totally different things, when in the Greek, it's just one thing. This should be translated by context. Whatever the context is should tell you whether it's believe, as in, yeah, I think that's true, or whether it's faith, where you say, yeah, I put my faith in that.
Did the Latin translation have a role in this problem?
Absolutely. The Latin translators were the first ones to separate it into two different words. And since the Latin translation was the only available translation when we first started doing an English translation, that's the way it was done there. One word for the verb, one word for the noun. The noun in your New Testaments is always faith. The verb is always believe. But it's the same Greek word, and so many times the meaning gets wrong because the translator didn't take the time to look at the context and see what it should be.
And what's so important about this difference?
Well, faith is a stronger word than believe. For instance, if I were to say, I believe it's going to rain tomorrow, and then I left the house with no rain gear, nobody would be particularly surprised. But if I say, I have faith it's going to rain tomorrow, and then I leave the house in the morning with no rain gear, people are going to say, he didn't have much faith, did he? Now, I want to use a passage, commonly known passage from the New Testament, to illustrate the point. If I take John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believes in him shall not perish but have everlasting life. That's the traditional translation. Now let's change that believe to faith. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever has faith in him. Now see the difference there? If I say believes in him, that means I believe he existed. Do I believe that he existed and God? What do I have to believe? How do I sort out what I have to believe? Do I believe in God, the miracles, the virgin birth, the resurrection? How much of this do I have to believe? I just believe in God and Jesus. Okay, I'm okay. But if I say I have faith, that whole issue of believe goes away. Yeah, you got to believe, obviously. If you don't believe in something, you don't have faith in it. But if you have faith in Jesus, then you're following him. You're doing what he says to do. Whole different dynamic. The problem with belief is that it's a work salvation. This guy's got this list of things you want to believe. This guy's got this list. You have to believe all of these. This guy's list says, no, what you got on that list is wrong. If I say I believe in Jesus and I believe in God, is that enough? That's all I need to do? Or do I need to believe in the resurrection? Do I need to believe in the miracles? Do I need to believe in the virgin birth? How much of this do I need to believe? And the answer is, it's not a matter of what you believe, it's who you have your faith in. Obviously, you have to believe in Jesus to have faith in him, but faith is what drives it. You do what you see Jesus telling you you should do. Part of the problem is believe is static. If I believe in God, well, that's all I have to do. If I believe in Jesus, that's all I have to do. Faith is dynamic. Faith says, what God tells me to do, I'll do. What Jesus tells me to do, I'll do. That's where the difference is really important.
Charlie, what context shows that faith is the right translation?
Well, perhaps the strongest evidence is in the book of James, where the second chapter of James just hammers this point. The whole book of James is about this, but that second chapter effectively says, If what you are doing is just believing God, you're not saved. But if it includes action that comes from that faith, then that's where you become part of God's team and you are saved. Faith is equal to ministry. If you have faith in God, you are going to minister. And if you minister, that's active. Even if the only ministry you can do is praying for people, that's active. You've got to be active. It's not just believing, it's getting on God's team. We've been talking about the 21st century New Testament. One of the things about that translation is that it brings out the fact that Christianity is all about faith in God. That's the number one fundamental of Christianity. You've got to have faith. You can't just believe in Him. You've got to have faith to do what He tells you to do. I'm urging people to visit ncm-21.com. That's NCM for New Century Ministries, 21 for 21st Century. So ncm-21.com, where you'll find information about this New Testament. You'll find information about Christianity. You'll find the full glossary for that New Testament, and you'll find a link that will let you purchase the New Testament and start reading it yourself. And once you read it and you really like it, share it with others.